Do you want to learn effective ways to build relationships, generate sales, and grow your business from successful entrepreneurs, startups, and CEOs without listening to a long interview? If so, you've come to the right place. Gresham Harkless values your time and is ready to share with you precisely the information you're in search of. This is the IAM215 podcast.
Hello. This is Gresh from the IAM215 podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Jody Cook of JC Social Media and Clever Tykes. Jody, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And what I wanted to do was just read a little bit more about Jody so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Jody is the owner of JC Social Media, a team of social media managers based in Birmingham, United Kingdom. She co-founded Clever Tykes, a series of children's storybooks inspiring enterprising behavior, which are read in every primary school in the UK and have just launched in the United States of America. She was included in the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2017 and won the 2017 Entrepreneur's Champion Award at the Great British Entrepreneur Awards. She also competes for Great Britain in powerlifting. Jody, are you ready to speak to the IAM215 community?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. You're definitely a dynamo. So I wanted to hear a lot more about what I call your CEO story and what led you to start your business.
Cool. Okay. So, the social media agency, I started purely there wasn't much thinking behind it. I just wanted to write social media posts for different companies. And that was from a love of writing and a kind of love of social media when it first started being a thing for companies. So it started off without a business plan apart from just get clients. And then once I had one client, I got another one and then got another one. And then it sort of went from there. But there was definitely no kind of, 5-page business plan saying all my huge plans. It was quite simple. And that's, and as we've grown the agency, we've kept to those very simple, basic, principles of just make clients happy. They recommend you, then you grow. And sometimes it just doesn't have to be complicated. And so when I was a couple of years into JC Social Media, I started talking to some friends and kind of people around me who'd also started businesses and trying to work out, why is there such a difference between people who think that starting their own business is something that would be a huge risk and that they could never, ever do, or maybe they'll do it, but 20 years in the future. And those people who just think, I'll give it a go. How hard can it be? Why not? And they don't see it as a risk. And often you can split the whole kind of business community into those two separate sections. And a lot of the time, from research, we found out that a lot of the time, the reason some people just feel like they can go ahead and start their own business is because they've had a role model growing up, someone who they've kind of learned from or heard about their story, who has made them think I could do that, and has made it accessible to them. And so if you think, I don't know if you're the same, if you had a role model growing up, Gresh, but it's very, very common for entrepreneurs, CEOs, business owners to have had one. And so as part of the kind of research around it, we looked into, if someone hasn't got a parent or a family friend that they know that started their own business, who are their business role models in the media, say? And we just found that business owners were portrayed really horribly in TV shows and in the media. And so you've got people like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. And then if you know Matilda, you've got her dodgy car dealer dad. And then in the Lego movie, you've got Lord Business, who's this horrible character who glues all the Lego together so no one can play with it. And business people are portrayed in a really mean, greedy, horrible way. And of course, we know that in reality, it's not like that. And we need people to go and start their own businesses to grow the economy and create jobs and create wealth. And so it was that thinking that led to me and my co-founder writing a series of children's storybooks to write the role models that kids could learn from. And so that when they got to 16 or so, they thought, okay, what do I want to do next? And starting a business was a viable option for them because they'd had that inspiration from quite a young age.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you're doing with JC Social Media and then also with Clever Tykes.
So with JC Social Media, the team is based in Birmingham in the UK, and most of our work is social media management. So where we run various different social media presences for our clients. And then we do quite a lot of training as well, training kind of consultancy and training all sorts of companies and individuals on how they can make best use of social media. And when we started off my kind of background, I guess, was in like healthcare and social care. So we started off with a lot of clients in that sector. And then we kind of slowly branched out into other sectors. And now it's like restaurants and professional services and lots of different weird and wonderful clients. So like I guess the more weird, the better, because they're the ones that tend to stand out really well online, as you'll know yourself.
Absolutely. And with Clever Tykes? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So with Clever Tykes, well, it's almost like split two ways. So we sell books on the website, we sell books through Amazon, and that's mainly, well, it used to be the UK, and then we launched on Amazon US fairly recently. So reaching kids kind of around the world through the storybooks and the teaching resources. So we've got things like activity packs and colouring packs, and our illustrator is absolutely fantastic. And so he's just helped us create like a range of resources to go alongside the storybooks. And so teachers who are going through the storybooks with their students, they kind of know which questions to ask. So we've got like teachers guides that run alongside them, which say, well, what's this character doing here? Why is she doing that? What could she do instead? And start to get those discussions going on with their own students. So our main audience is teachers, parents, and homeschoolers. But then 3 years ago, what we realised was that the kids whose lives we can change the most are not the ones whose parents can necessarily buy the books for them. And so that's when we thought, how do we go about getting these books in the hands of every child in the UK without them necessarily paying for them themselves? And so this is where we decided to get a sponsor on board. And then we got a few of these signed off. And then we realised it's taking so long to get 10 schools signed off. It's going to take us like years and years and years to do the whole country. Why don't we just forget all the small stuff? Why don't we just go really big on this? Why don't we find one sponsor to put books in all 24,000 primary schools in the UK? Because the sales cycle is probably the same. And we just had it in our heads. Like, there is a person in a room somewhere who can sign this off, who can say yes. All we have to do is find that person and it'll all be fine. And so that's what we decided to do. And so pretty much told everyone what we were doing, got people to kind of tell their friends and tell their contacts, and made sure we were at the forefront of people's minds. And then a kind of friend of a friend told a friend. And then we had a meeting with a guy called Martin, who was one of the directors at Lloyds Banking Group. And so we told him all about the project. And then, to kind of cut a long story short, he ended up signing off that project. And then we were able to gift the storybooks to every primary school in the UK, along with the kind of teaching resources and everything else that went with them, so that so every kid could have a positive entrepreneurial role model.
So I absolutely love that. And you might have already touched on this, but what would you say is like your secret sauce, or what do you feel kind of distinguishes you or your organization apart?
I'd say what distinguishes us as the co-founders, I guess, is that we just don't really give up and we just kind of don't mind, following up that bit extra or going that bit further to get in touch with someone. And just, we kind of see it as overtaking the people who have given up, and that will just get us further. Like if someone's not responded to you like 3 times, how many people give up at that point? What about the 4th or the 5th or the 6th time? How many people are actually vying for someone's attention at that point? And it's probably fewer. So just carrying on going often helps you get to where you want to go. But then I think also on the secret sauce type side of things, with the storybooks, we actually welcome like kind of competitors, because I don't think there's another series of kind of kids storybooks that do exactly what we do, but there are ones approaching exactly the same problem in a different way. And I see that as a really, really good thing, because it's validating the market. It's not like the question doesn't become, should I buy my kids a set of these kind of storybooks? It becomes, which series of children's storybooks should I buy my kids? And that's great, because we want it to be something that everyone just decides to do. And so we really welcome like other people in the space, and we do a fair bit of work actually promoting other companies that are in the enterprise education space, because we want to validate it as an industry. Like, we want to make sure it's important, it's at the forefront of education, and that everyone kind of knows about it and the benefit that it brings.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If at the end of the day, there's young kids out there that are learning that it's okay and learning how to be entrepreneurs and business owners, at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, and that's helping out in any way, shape, or form. So I appreciate you again for doing that. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you for what I call a CEO hack. And this might be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but it's something that makes you more effective and efficient.
Okay. I was thinking about this earlier, and I think overall it's books. But I was trying to think which ones have added the most. And I think there are kind of three that I wanted to mention that are all part of the same kind of theme. One of them is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. One of them is called One Thing by Gary Keller. And the final one, which I've actually just finished reading, is It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, which was written by the Basecamp founders. And so they're all along a very similar theme, which is focus and avoiding distraction. And that's something that is definitely important to me and has been along my journey so far, that unless I'm absolutely clear on my vision and what I want to do and who it's benefiting and the reason behind everything, it is so easy to get distracted. And you could end up wasting years of your career just fulfilling pointless obligations, doing what other people want you to do and not really actually achieving anything. So the books that have really spoken the most to me are the ones that are on that theme and the ones that really make you think, no, I'm not going to say yes to that, because yes, it would help that other person, but maybe I can help them in a different way that actually doesn't take away from the one thing that I really, really want to achieve, which for me at the moment is getting my storybooks into every primary school in the world. So having that at the forefront of everything means it's easier to avoid getting distracted, and especially reading books like that and finding just little kind of tips and tricks and things to say that help you along that journey. And so I think it might be in the It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work book, but they talk about how can you have an autoresponder that goes back to people that helps signpost where they can find their answer without you being chained to your email all the time? Or how can you just be more efficient in some of your processes? And how can you just eliminate some things? There's no point automating or delegating something that you can just not do.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And it's funny you say that those two are my two absolute favorite books, The One Thing and Essentialism. I have not read the Basecamp book, but I will now add that to my list. And it keeps everything in line. If it's, what's the easiest thing that you can do that by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary. I tell myself that all the time because you try to focus and laser focus. So I love those CEO hacks. And now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this is a word of wisdom or piece of advice, or if you can hop into a time machine, what would you tell your younger business self?
If I look back at my former business self, I was so unbelievably naive. And I think on one hand, I probably could have got to places faster than I did do if I hadn't been as naive. But on another hand, I think maybe it was actually better and maybe I wouldn't change anything because it was probably part of my story. But at first, when I was starting out with my social media agency, if someone said to me I want to talk to you about social media, I'd be like, okay. And then I'd basically keep calling them until they talked to me. And I didn't ever comprehend that someone might have just been saying that to be polite. I'd be like, well, you said you want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. And so I think I was just so naive to think that anyone wouldn't mean what they say. So I always treated everyone at face value. And I guess maybe sometimes that's not been the best thing for me to do because it means that you might give out trust too quickly. So that's probably my kind of what I'd say to my younger self, don't verify before you trust. But then on the other hand, it's would you rather be overly trusting and would you rather be overly cynical? And I think I'd pick overly trusting each time, nevertheless.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And sometimes they say, being naive, it can be a bad thing because you're doing something you don't know. But sometimes that's when you break down barriers and do things that other people say can't be possible because you are naive and you don't realize that it's that difficult. Yeah. Or you trust that somebody's going to do business with you and they've never done business with anybody, but you just keep calling them because that's what they said. And then all of a sudden they're your client. So I love that kind of two-edged perspective.
I think if you're going to be naive, you almost have to accept that other people will be more experienced and will be more hardened to it and almost not take their advice because if you've got this big dream and you know that you can make it happen, yeah, sure, there might be an element of naivety, but the last thing you want to hear is someone going, oh no, I don't think that'll work. Oh, well, I know someone that tried to do that and they failed because it's well, go away, leave me to it.
Exactly. So no, I love that perspective. And now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. We're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show, but I wanted to ask you, Jody, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Being a CEO means doing the hard things and not the easy things. Mm-hmm. And the easy things are, it's easy to hide behind email. It's easy to hide behind AdWords. It's easy to not confront someone. It's easy to kind of just say, oh, I'll deal with that another time. And it's hard to do the stuff that will actually make the difference, like being honest with people, like confronting, like asking for the sale, like public speaking, putting yourself out there. I feel like a CEO's responsibility especially is doing the hard things in order to demonstrate to their kind of followers or their team or their tribe or whoever it is that the hard things are the things that make the difference, to kind of inspire them to do it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those are the things that move the needle. So you have to make sure that you do that. And as a CEO, you're kind of charged in terms of doing that. And that's kind of like your role and responsibility. So wonderful definition. And Joey, I truly appreciate you for taking some time out. What I want to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you want to let our readers and our listeners know. And then, of course, how they can get a hold of you, get a copy of your books and all of the awesome things that you're working on.
Okay. Well, the main place you can find out about me is jodiecook.com. And then from that is linked to my agency, and then also clevertykes.com, which are the children's storybooks that I have. At the moment, one thing that I'm putting together is a book on how we can raise entrepreneurial kids. And what I love hearing about is how people were raised themselves to be entrepreneurial. And so if there's anyone listening who's got any stories of, when they were younger, my parents, they did this particular exercise with me, or they talked to me about a certain thing which has really made the difference. I would love to hear about that, because those examples are just so inspiring for parents, teachers, and homeschoolers to carry out with the kids that are under their care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, I truly appreciate you. And we'll have all those links in the show notes just so that everybody can follow up with you and then let you know if they had some really great entrepreneurial stories as well as children, so that you can add to your book. But again, I appreciate all the work that you're doing and all the awesome things that you're doing. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the I Am CEO podcast, powered by Blue 16 Media. Tune in next time and visit us at IAM215.co. IAM215 is not just a phrase, it's a community. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. Grab CEO gear at www.ceogear.co. This has been the I Am CEO podcast with Gresham Harkless. Thank you for listening.